Hi everyone, thanks for watching. My name is Payton Cook and I teach the Sunday drawing for adults classes at the library. Even though we can't be together in person right now, I wanted to bring you some art in your home. So I hope that you enjoy the presentation. So today we're going to be talking about patterned landscapes. And there'll be an art project at the end. So if you have art supplies at home, feel free to participate. I'm going to start by just talking about what a pattern is. So a pattern is one of the principles of design, and it's a combination of elements or shapes repeated in a reoccurring and regular arrangement. It's a little different than rhythm. Rhythm is a combination of elements that are repeated, but with variations. So we really can find patterns everywhere. We find them in nature, we find them on our clothing, even flooring, stuff like that. So they're really common. You just simply take any kind of shape or line and simply repeat it. Okay, so moving on to the landscape end of things. So what is a landscape? Landscape is a type of art that refers to drawing or painting natural scenery such as mountains, trees, grass, and sky. A landscape will usually have a background of some sort, such as a sky with clouds or maybe some mountains back there, a midground, such as grass and trees, and a foreground. Maybe it's flowers, maybe there's a really large tree in the foreground, for example. You can have all sorts of different things. So I want to point out some different artists that use patterns in their landscapes. And these are going to vary from some older artists that, we studied in art history in our textbooks for years and years, and then also some contemporary artists that maybe you aren't familiar with. So I'm going to start with David Hockney. So David Hockney is a contemporary artist. He's still alive today. He's a British painter, draftsman, printmaker, stage designer, and photographer. And he was an important contributor to the pop art movement of the 1960s, and he's still considered one of the most influential British artists of the 20th century. And rather than painting overlapping layers of leaves on trees, Hockney often fills these areas with repeated leaf patterns that look not super realistic, but very visually interesting. You might be familiar with some of his artwork, even if you don't recognize the name, or you might recognize the name and not really be so familiar with his actual paintings, but he has a variety. And it's not just landscapes that he's known for, he's also known for portraits, lots of different painting styles. Today we're just going to focus on his landscapes, and I want you to pay attention to the repeated elements that we see in his artwork, the repeated flowers, the repeated grass shapes, leaf shapes, all of that. Okay, so I honestly don't know how to pronounce her last name, but we're going to talk about Rennie B, we're going to say. So she's a folk artist. She has a very playful style with very little concern for exact details such as perspective and scale. But instead, she fills her canvases with bright colors and patterns. So she's a contemporary artist. She's a full-time painter. She lives in Northeast Ohio. She loves using intense colors and contrasts. You can see her artwork, her style is very whimsical. So here in this colorful shoreline painting, we can see pretty much full range of colors. We see those repeated tree shapes over and over again, along with the repeated houses, boats, and reflections. I love the little textures that you can see in the little houses in the background. Like I said before, really, really bright colors here in this piece. So in this piece, Easter Egg Hunt, again, another really fun, very whimsical painting. I think my favorite part in this one is the smaller trees that are in the front that have all of the little patterned birds on it. It's a really small, subtle detail, but I just think it's so fun. The other part that I really like too is just all of the little dots in those trees, and those same little dots, how you can see them throughout the whole foreground and midground. The next one I'm sharing is Tuscan Scene with Sailboats. This one, I think, just has so many repeated shapes, that circular shape specifically, with the round flowers in the foreground, and then the bushes in the midground and background. And again, we just see, we don't really see many things. That's just the one thing. Like we see one house and one tree in the background, but even still, there's so many other elements with it that have that repeated shape or element. So the next artist I want to talk about is Grant Wood. So with Grant Wood, he is known for being a regionalist painter in the 1930s. So with his artwork, similar to our previous artist, that there's a little bit of a playful, whimsical style going on. He is depicting a lot of rural Midwest landscape scenes. And in his artwork, you can see these swirling rows of just perfectly shaped plants that are, the seeds would have been planted just perfectly spaced apart. And yeah, just trees growing from layers and layers of hills. They're really fun pieces. So this is an example of that. So fall plowing, and here we see that vast horizon in the distance. It's mostly foreground, midground heavy, so we don't see that many details in the background, but we see in each of the different little shapes that we see here, we see different patterns in each. This one is a little less colorful than the previous one. The trees just look like little crowns of broccoli, but all of the different hills, like each of the different sections, again, you just see a different pattern here. So really fun pieces. This one has more detail than the last one. This is a little bit of a broader piece where we can see more of the background space in addition to the midground and foreground. Lots of trees being repeated. I love the back right corner where we just see these little round circular trees that again, they look like a little pile of peas or something. It doesn't even look real, but really playful and whimsical. Even just the patterns that you see in the trees too. These two trees that are, I guess, about halfway on the right side here. That one has that zigzag pattern. The other one is full of little polka dots. And then even to the right of those, the taller trees, you can see a fun zigzag pattern in those as well. Okay, so the next artist is another one with a challenging name here. So I won't even attempt that first name, but Hundertwasser is the artist that we're going to be looking at. Hundertwasser has so many incredible works of art, and he's abstracting the landscape in a really unique way. It's very, very intriguing, I think. I mean, it's almost wild the way that he does it, because it's hardly reminiscent of a landscape, but there is some imagery that is still fairly recognizable. And he was really fascinated by spirals, so you see a lot of spirals in his artwork. You see a lot of different patterns just in general, but a lot of spirals. And though he uses straight lines still in his artwork, he found straight lines to be godless and immoral. Anyway, so we see these spirals in this piece here titled "The Rain Falls Far From Us, Falls the Rain." And this teardrop shape, of course, repeated as well throughout. And faces, checkerboard patterns, lots of horizontal lines, vertical lines, a lot of crisscross lines. This piece, Greentown, this is one of my favorite pieces. I like green for one, and blues and all of those colors I think are just so nice, but also just the detail if you really look closely, and I hope this image is coming out pretty clearly because I know some of the others Might be a little bit blurry, but the little people that you can see, there's some car shapes, there's obviously just the trees and that swirl once again, the windows and the buildings, and just the winding buildings throughout the piece. This one is a slightly blurrier picture. I do apologize for that, but you get this look of, I don't know if they're trees, maybe they're trees, and all of a sudden they start to get higher and higher, and they start looking like hot air balloons, which I think is really cool and unique. Of course, that contrasted against the stripes and the just repeated windows throughout. And then if you notice this, these shapes at the very bottom, they look like little faces. So the next artist, luckily I can say this one's name, Faith Ringgold. You might be familiar with Faith Ringgold. She is still alive today. She's a contemporary painter, writer, mixed media sculptor, as well as a performance artist. She's known for her narrative quilts. And she creates these images of cityscapes rather than landscapes. And she also incorporates a lot of human figures into her work. She tells a story, so they're story quilts. And so everything that she does is on these quilts. And you may have read, she's got a few books. One of the ones that's most well known is called Tar Beach, and you can find that at the Ann Arbor District Library. So this is an example of one of the quilts that we see in Tar Beach. So showing this family eating together on a rooftop with this city scene behind them. It's another scene kind of similar. And her work is a lot about families and just customs, traditions, different things like that. And I really like the way that she incorporates not just a pattern, like a sense of pattern throughout the imagery, but also surrounding the story that you see here in the scene with a patterned, a quilt-like pattern, of course, but then in each of the little different types of fabric, they're also filled with patterns. Hokusai is the next artist we're going to talk about. Hokusai was a Japanese artist, born 1760, died in 1849. He was a painter and printmaker. So, mostly known for woodblock prints. And I'm going to show you the one that you would probably recognize, the Great Wave. And here we see the repeated curve pattern, of course, in the white foam. We also see a lot of little dots from the spray of the ocean, and just the striped pattern even in the blue ocean. He also did this Mount Fuji series, and you can see this a lot of works in this series. So I can't remember exactly how many there were, but there were a lot of Mount Fuji works of art that you can find, and the kind of frequent depiction of Mount Fuji stems from his religious beliefs. So Mount Fuji has traditionally been linked with eternal life. So you can see why he would probably want to continue to paint this over and over again. I just think the representation of the fact that he just repeatedly painted it, of course, kind of speaks to the eternal life metaphor there. And then looking at the piece itself, we see the clouds being repeated often, as well as the little blue tree-like shapes that we see here at the bottom of the work of art. Henri Matisse is the next artist. He was a French artist. He was born in 1869 and died in 1954. And he's really known for his use of color as well as his technique. And in his technique, you see just some really great brushwork. And the brushwork itself, I think, is what really has that sense of pattern and rhythm in his work. So his brushstrokes just really seem to move and dance. So we see that here in this piece, along with this piece. Russo is another artist that really focuses on pattern. He's more known for his patterned animal drawings and paintings. So less known for his landscapes. He's very inspired by animals, but he's born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and so he's inspired by the urban landscape that is all around him. So it really represents his life. So I think that he really incorporates a lot of his inspiration into his artwork. So I wanted to still include his paintings. He'll often start his works of art by painting the paper with a pattern and then drawing the cityscape on top of that painted pattern. So here we see his use of really bold colors and kind of an abstract pattern that we see with his use of color, the way that his application of his paint kind of dries on the paper. This one is a little bit more similar to his style, or style that he's really known for with his animals. So this is obviously his interpretation of The Starry Night by Van Gogh. The next artist that I wanted to share, her name is Sandy Applegate, and she is a fantastic artist. I discovered her a couple of years ago. She works in several different media. She'll work in acrylic, watercolor, pen and ink, monoprints, all sorts of different things. And with the different media, her body of work contains several different series of images. So she keeps a sense of humor about her and the way that she approaches the creating process. And she likes to, leave room in her work for the mysterious. And so she doesn't actually plan out every single little part. She'll leave some things up to just kind of going about creating the piece and letting it be kind of an intuitive process. And so in her work, you can see a lot of mixed media as well. Her colors are bold, they're very vibrant, and though she is painting a representational landscape, she also incorporates other worldly or abstract elements. And so many contain suggestions of the macrocosmic or microcosmic in them, often using circles or repetition to indicate the ongoing cyclic nature of life. So I love her work. I love this piece. You can see she just breaks down the landscape in different sections, generally kind of horizontally oriented. And the part that I really like actually of this piece are these white tree-like, maybe they're supposed to be trees, shapes that we see kind of in the mid-ground. And I just like that they're different from the rest of the piece. And I don't know, they're really unique, but they kind of break up some of the pattern and feel like they give my eye a place to rest. So this is another one of her paintings. Again, we just see all of these really cool, very, very, very detailed patterns in each of the sections with those little tiny stripes and the little tiny circles and scale-like shapes. I love the shape of this one, just the kind of panoramic view that we see here, and the really bold colors is such a nice contrast to all that tight pattern. So Helen Wells also creates really intuitive works of art. So they're not, very very well planned or anything like that. Not that that's a bad thing, but I do the same thing a lot of the times. But her paintings will really develop over several days, and she responds to the materials that she has and the marks on the page that she is creating that end up creating these really complex landscapes. And I'm amazed. I just recently discovered her, maybe I said that, I can't even remember now, but some of them are really simple. Like this one I feel like is kind of simple. It obviously has a use of pattern, and it's sort of like a landscape. I mean, I found her artwork, and then I was like, okay, is that a landscape? Is it close enough? And I felt like it did, or at least the description of her work seemed that way. And she is fascinated by patterns. She, on her website, which is helenwellsartist.com, she has a really great website. And she talks about how ever since she was a little girl, how obsessed she was about patterns, and whether it was a natural pattern, something found in nature, or an engineered pattern. And she had always wanted to be a textile designer, and she liked to go to the fabric stores and see all the different patterned fabrics next to each other, and the way that the different patterns would kind of clash and dance with each other, just this cacophony of pattern. And so she's really attracted to that, and I think you can see a lot of that come out in her artwork. These are kind of some more maybe subtle pieces, but she has just a really fantastic work of art. Like her whole portfolio was just really fun to look at, so I would encourage you to check out her website. But again, just her use of color, and she does have some pieces that are black and white too, but she also uses some metallics. It looks like the metallics are always really hard to photograph, but I think that's what's going on. Okay, so for the art project today, you can use whatever materials you have. I'm going to be doing this digitally, so you can pretend like I'm using colored pencils or maybe watercolor and an ink pen, but whatever you have on hand will probably work for this. So I'm just going to do a quick little time-lapse video of the project that I made, and then just talk a little bit about my process. So similar to the Sandy Applegate pieces, I am creating a composition with simple like mountain range looking shapes, and then I'm just using a few basic colors, keeping it kind of bold and bright to start. And then now that I have that part kind of blocked in, I'm starting to go back and add some highlights, add a little bit of texture. I love texture always in my artwork, so even when I'm creating something that's digital, I want to still have that texture. So I am starting to layer in some of that now. And again, you can do this however you want. I want you to look back at the artists that we talked about today. So think about Hokusai, think about Grant Wood, think about Dean Russo, Hundertwasser, all of those artists, and whichever one that you were really inspired by, or I'm sure there maybe have been more than one, but think about some of their techniques that they're using, and then just start applying them. So here I am again. I'm doing this digitally, so I know it's cheating a little bit. It's using my resources. So I'm filling in some patterns here in each of the different sections. So each section, for now anyway, I'm just going to make a different pattern. So that's what I'm layering in now. And now, towards the end here, I just added lots of different textures that went over kind of the whole thing. I'm trying out some different ones that obviously don't work so well, so you can see me deleting that. But now I'm just kind of overlaying lots of different textures over the whole thing, which may be more similar to the last artist that we talked about, Helen Wells. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation today, and I hope you have fun creating this art project. Spend time this week making it look awesome.